I got sober at 19. I was looking at 14 years in prison at that time. I had a baby on the way. I had fought 6 cops, and
he's a bad man. So I see some neighbors. I see some friends. I see some pseudo rats.
fuck
We're going to
yeah.
talk a lot about that. Oh, hello. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello.
Hey, Adam.
I'm super nervous.
Who
Adam
else?
Levine's in the
What's
front
up,
row.
Herb?
I'm super fucking nervous now.
I know, it's super intimate. I've done a few of these, and they've been like, we were in Austin, we had 1,200 people in Austin, and then we showed LA, and nobody showed up, and everybody was self-conscious, the people who did. It was very typical for LA, but this is nice. This is nice. I'm going to say fuck a few times, so are you guys good with that? That guy isn't. That guy hasn't smiled once.
Well, I want to open by saying I love, and this description sounds like I'm making less of the genre somehow when I say celebrity memoir. There's something about the word celebrity. We both don't love that word, is my guess, right? But it is the genre, and I love that genre. There are some amazing celebrity memoirs. And so when you wrote yours, I was like, this is my favorite genre. You are one of my favorite actors. I was flabbergasted by your ability to write.
Thanks, man.
The prose in this book is so spectacular, you guys. And I kept thinking, what is that about? Because it's not like you went to Harvard. It's probably why he writes so good. But and I think
I kind of look like I didn't go to Harvard, didn't I? Like a Neanderthal thing.
It's one of those things also that I love, that it didn't take me 3 pages, 4 pages. Like, I knew immediately that this was going to be a special book. And also the way you had the confidence to let it be so it's really impressionistic. I was trying to think of how do I describe it. It's super impressionistic. And
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
No. Not that I think you're talking too much. I don't. It's your fucking podcast.
You just don't want the compliments.
It's your podcast,
I know.
dude.
Yeah.
But it's just, did you have a because we don't know each other well.
Right.
We've met a few times. We've talked a few times. Spent a little time together. Was there a kind of a predetermined or idea that you had? Like, once you got the book, you go, oh, I think it will be this, or...
I will say, and I loved the title, the cover art, and we talked about how much I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That tips you that
Joey
it's going to be sort of punk rock and roll, super don't give a fuck.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
like,
that's well put.
You look at mine. Mine's like, please buy my book. Please buy my book. Please buy my book. That's what like my cover looks like.
Well, they had said that to me, and I think it was based not on your cover, but a few covers, which was, we want a really handsome picture of you, like maybe in front of a pool.
Yes.
See-through shirt on.
See, and that's like,
are you sure you want to see this?
Yes! Dad bod, let's go!
I'm a character actor.
But like, no, you are. If I'm the poster boy for people pleasing, he's the poster boy for like
of everything else.
Sticking a thumb up somebody's nose. But no, I loved. So yes, I knew I was in for something different just from the cover, which is great because sometimes you do judge a book by the cover.
I love the idea of going into something, even like what we're talking about, personality-wise or celebrity-wise, of going into something and saying, I expect that. And getting something different.
100%. Well, and also you have the benefit, as we all do when we come from a different discipline, of the bar's very low. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've made my whole career out of like low expectations, and it has nothing to do with my name. You know, it's like, people
That's not true.
People
That's
don't
not
expect
true.
much, and then you kind of over deliver, and it's great. So,
well, you did Wayne's World. I mean, you just said fuck it, and you did Wayne's World, and then you went and you did the series, which you were amazing on.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously,
Thank you. Well,
like no bullshit. I mean, I would tell you right now if I didn't think so.
I know you wouldn't, because you're a straight shooter. And I know that. I read your book.
Right, good. I'm glad that's what you got from it.
And then I think about the similarities. You started. I grew up in Malibu when it was rough and tumble, and people can't believe that Malibu was ever like working class tough.
Yeah.
And then I read about you growing up in Montecito with the Cito Rats.
Which nobody also, that's the parallel between you and me, is I know Sean and, Emilio and all those guys. And those were parents that lived there because they were outsiders. They were misfits. That was a place, you didn't go that far, and it was cheap out there. In Montecito now, there's Godmothers in Montecito.
I know, look at this. So fancy.
Super expensive membership.
But
like back in the day, like Montecito had a couple of people that kind of like Malibu who lived there, like outsider artists, but it was
the odd rock
pretty
star.
severe place.
Maybe you had Joe Walsh.
We did have Joe Walsh.
We had Bob Dylan.
Bob, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Bob's still there on Point Doom.
No, you had Bob
Yes,
Dylan,
not
yes.
up here, yes.
Oh, I thought we got him.
No, you never got him. He's ours. We're not giving Bob away.
Okay.
And there's something about the sort of, what do they always say at the Montecito Planning Commission when I try to build something? Semi-rural.
Right.
There's something about the semi-rural feel that is such a weird dichotomy with what you guys got up to. And what you talk about in the book is the Cito use. Is it like, do you think it's just the typical teenage boredom, or was it something more? Because I love when you talk about your teenage years here, because I relate so much.
It's a perfect segue, and you and I haven't talked about this, but can I read something?
Yes, please.
I was going to do it the other way around, but I think it's a good time for me to read. This was all of us skateboarding and surfing. This was getting a ride from Matt Mondragon's hunchback grandmother Dee in the blue rusted Datsun 510 wagon with all of our boards roped and bungee corded to its roof.
Let's fucking go.
This was the late 1970s and the early 1980s. This is when McDonald's was good for you. And it was the beginning of the cocaine craze that none of us would be able to afford, and all of us would steal, fight, and fuck rich old ladies for. How do you like your membership so far? Right on. This was the time when the guys I hung out with didn't run from cops, but instead threw full bottles of cheap gin at their windshields. Kenny. We built half pipes in their backyards and stole their cars when they were sleeping to go to parts of town where they'd sell us cases of beer for 10 cents on the dollar. This was before the heroin epidemic and back when Led Zeppelin was considered as punk as anyone willing not to show up at fucking Woodstock. The trips were well worth the induction into a movement that was as close to cleaning a wolf's cage at 7 years old as I'd known since. And compared to everything else around us, it was the best thing going on. Yeah.
It's and I do believe the house that you reference.
Yes.
Is now owned. Did you tell you how the world has changed? That property is now owned by Prince Harry. So that tells you. I'm not saying things have changed.
That's not true.
Just saying.
And I moved back recently.
Can you believe moving back to this area? There's ghosts on every corner,
dude.
literally for you, right?
No, I got so stressed out about moving here because it represented something very specific to me that I ended up contracting a mild case of Bell's palsy.
From the stress?
Absolutely 100%. There's nothing else to blame it on. The last time I got Bell's palsy, 17 years ago when I was thinking about moving back up here.
Wow.
So the 2 times I've gotten Bell's palsy are when I was thinking about moving up here.
And
then I moved up here and I was like, oh, it's all good. Like, we're good.
Okay. I was
super
say,
nice people.
Have you gotten to the other side of it where the memories aren't the number one thing you think of when you walk down the street?
Not only that, all these good memories are starting to come up. I'm like, wow, I remember when I was on Biltmore, we were down in Butterfly, I was at Miramar, all these great things. So all these things are kind of like popping out of the ground. Go, wow. My childhood wasn't as severe as I kind of like illustrated it to be. I had kind of made it, which we do anyways. Writers or storytellers, you make everything just more dramatic and more severe. And not that it wasn't, because I think it was. But all the other stuff kind of, came to. And it's been really, really nice.
It's good to have you back up here for
Thanks,
sure.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
your mother as a character in the book.
Yeah. So my mother, I didn't have an intention, because I see things in vignettes. I see everything in vignettes, and I see everything in contrasting vignettes, which gets me a little paranoid sometimes, because when things are going really well, I feel like the law of averages. It's not the shoe is always going to drop. I don't feel that way, and I don't feel victimized in any way. I just know that's how the world works. You know, a great kind of illustration of that is No Country. The end of No Country, people say, oh, you know, the end. We want a movie that's not in a perfect Hollywood bow. And then you give them a movie like that, where you expect the villain and the protagonist to go head to head at the end. And my character, Llewellyn, just dies. And that's kind of how life is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how I see it, and that's how I embrace it. I can't believe this happened. It's like, I believe anything can happen at any time, and that might be because of the kind of chaotic vortex that I grew up in. So I didn't think about that. The book kind of dictated itself. I didn't even intend, like, I'm looking at journal writings and I say, oh yeah, there's one of my mom and there's this. But she had the biggest impact, so that it started to dictate itself. That when I wrote 450 pages, and then I started to really kind of severely cut it down into clarity and simplicity, that's what was left.
How much journaling did you have to work with?
88 full journals.
No way.
Yeah, full, like this high. Yeah. A
how
lot
did
of
you
time
ever
on
have
my
the-
hands.
how
A
did
lot
you-
of drugs.
So up to 4 in the morning. I was doing other things. It was not journaling.
No. You were a teen idol.
So tell me, my imagination, if I were to look at those, it would be like that scene in The Shining. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no
Same
play
word
makes
over and
Jack
over.
a dull boy for 88.
Yeah, it's 3 clear bins of journals. How many years? Probably from 8. Like, it wasn't every year, but most years. I always wrote.
Your whole life.
Yeah, from 8 on, 9. You know, the early stuff is like, you know, whatever. But yeah, and then it got, you know, I mean, it was, I don't know, there was always it felt like a survival mechanism. It was just a better relationship with myself, or a place where I could throw honesty onto, or I could at least look at what was going on. I never understood what was going on. You know, my mom ran a wildlife way station. We had wolves. We had, you know, we were woken up by bobcats biting our cheek and making it bleed, and it was totally normal for my mom. My brother got 60 stitches in his leg from a wolf, you know, and it was like, you know, the whole thing that you'll read in the book. It's very mother heavy in that way. What was I saying? I fucking lost my train of thought.
Therapy.
Oh, the therapy. The guy fell asleep. Like, I looked over and I was like, yeah, I just don't know what. And I looked over and I saw. I was like, dude. So I think that there was, there's something about the page that's always represented to me something better than the reality of what was going on. And then at some point, I married the two. And I was like, it's okay to be honest. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to have ownership over how you feel. I'm me. I wasn't trying. I think for the longest time I was wanting to be somebody else. And then one day I just became me. And some of that was sobriety. Some of that was, there's a guy in Santa Barbara I've known for a very long time, since I was 20, Anthony Zerbe, who's my best friend. And he had a major impact on my life. Saw things in me that I could never see in myself. So we were doing theater in Rochester, New York, and he would leave 8 books on my doorstep. I'd wake up at 7 in the morning and open my door, and there'd be a pile of books there, you know. So people who cared, you know. And then, you know, I would write long letters to Sam Shepard when I was 20, 21. Long letters that went off on these tangents. I didn't know Sam Shepard. There was nowhere to send those letters. Those letters just went in the pile, the Sam Shepard pile. One day. And I did. One day I knew Sam Shepard. Never gave him those letters, but I knew Sam Shepard. Yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild what you go through, the kind of labyrinth, this kind of chaotic labyrinth that you go to in order to find your own voice. And I think that, you know, you write like Kerouac, or write like Bukowski, and all the people that you go through. I took a class in Rochester, New York with Allen Ginsberg, you know, and it's just looking for the voice, the painter looking for their thing. You know, Van Gogh doing the little brush strokes, and everybody was like, I don't even know what you're doing, man. You're fucking it all up. If you just paint this other way, you can sell. But that was him. That was ownership, you know. And then one day finding your voice and just going, you know what? I know I could drop Bob Dylan's name, but I won't. You know, I'll turn it into a satire instead, and I'll call myself out for wanting to. And that's the book that I wrote. And we didn't sell it beforehand. We didn't sell it based on name or celebrity or anything. We wrote the whole book, and then we sold the book. And few people turned it down.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I wrote the whole book.
There was no deal.
Oh, no. No, I didn't want one.
Amazing.
I wanted the book I wanted to know what they were
I like
getting.
money, see. So
No, I know. I like money, too.
Yeah.
But I was stealing at a very young age, so I have a lot of ways I can make money. No, just why do you think I moved to Santa Barbara?
That's right.
No, I'm kidding. I've never learned so much in my life as editing my stuff and being really, you know, like just cut. The minute I had it in my head and said, no, don't do it, I would do it.
Right.
And then clarify, simplify. Because I have a tendency to go off on these bong hits, and I try to keep that to a minimum,
I had
like
an
Pynchon.
acting teacher who I loved once. I don't know if it's the same for you, but usually there's at least one line in a script like, I'm never saying that.
Oh, yeah.
And that
My character wouldn't do that?
Yeah, but
Totally.
my acting coach would say, usually there's something about that line that's triggering something in you, and
Totally.
that is exactly the line you have to say.
Probably the most important line. Probably the line that will have the most effect.
That's right.
Or be the most effective later on.
And it's the same with writing.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
But what about that other thing where you would talk a lot to directors, and you knew that all you were too afraid to actually do the scene, so you would talk to directors literally into the ground just to give yourself more time to keep yourself away from the scene?
Oh, yeah.
That's an actor trick.
Big time.
Yeah. Totally controlled by fear.
Yes.
Fear.
I once worked with an actress who shall go nameless, Liv Tyler, who
Whore, you whore.
literally the scene was she walks into a bar, there's one seat open, one, it's packed, and I'm sitting next to it, and she comes in and, do you mind if I sit here and we have a conversation? 45 minutes with the director of why she would sit there.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, well, because it's the only seat and because it says so in the script.
Yeah.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories is, please tell me, I've already told it to people because it's so great, your interaction with Steven Spielberg on Goonies. Some of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, well, I was, I'd come from here and nobody knew that. So I went into this kind of innocent, kind of beautiful thing. You know, it's like the Goonies. And I got kicked out of my house by my mom in Santa Barbara. I stopped by the bottle shop. My mom was picking up a bottle of booze. I saw this dude. I saw my girlfriend, Stacy Gunderson, and I had to say goodbye. And I was crying and all that. So I drove my Honda Civic wagon, just the lamest car you could be driving, down there, and I stayed on my dad's couch. My dad was with, his second wife at that time, not yet his wife. And I really wanted to try something new. I had missed 36 out of 56 days of school in Santa Barbara High. And so I wasn't really going anyway. And so I went down there and I said and I started martial arts. I started doing martial arts on a crazy level, twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And then I thought maybe I should do this acting thing. It's like kind of what everybody resorts to when they don't know what to do. They either become a real estate agent or an actor.
100%.
So I chose acting. And then I made up a total bullshit resume. Like I remember the Libero Theater.
Yeah, of course.
But I said the Librero International Theater, and I did. And then one agent finally picked me up. I think she knew, and she finally picked me up. So I went through 350 auditions.
Wait, is that real?
That's no.
350
on my children.
auditions.
On my children. Like I remember 4 auditions a day at some point. Or I would go in there and I'd hear like you, or I'd hear, Sean or whoever else, like Chris Penn, you know what I mean?
You'd hear us behind the wall.
Like, yeah, and then like, fuck, they're good, and they come out, and then I would get in there, and I would always get super nervous. I've always been a very kind of fear-based person, you know.
When we came up, literally, you would sit in a room,
hallway,
and you'd hear somebody just crushing it on the other side of the door. I'm like, oh, I wasn't going to do it that way.
Yeah.
And then out Tim Hutton would walk out with his Oscar in his hand.
Yeah, with an Oscar in his hand.
Right?
Totally. No, seriously. And so it was, I think Goonies was like quite an accident, you know. I went in there, I'd been told, like, you know, they pulled the Brolin thing. Are you Brolin's kid? Yeah, okay, you want to be an actor, huh? So instead of that kind of nepotistic thing, which I think you probably understand, they looked at me and they were like, oh yeah? So act.
Yeah, show us.
So I studied. And this is the setup, is I studied, and I got Stanislavski books, and I got Grotowski, The Poor Theater, and I got Antonin Artaud and The Theater of Cruelty. I mean, I literally stayed in a bookstore 90% of the time. And then I met Dick Donner and Steven Spielberg, and I just looked right for that part. You look at Sean Astin, you look at the type of movie it is, so they're like, that's the guy. I went back 6 times just so they could make sure. And then I did it. And then I was on the set. I'm reading all this stuff with these tiny little wooden trailers. And I came to Steven at some point. And we were in one of the tunnels. And I said, hey, Steven, can I talk to you for a second? He was like, yeah, sure.
You're how old at this point? Just give me that.
16.
Okay.
Like really dumb, too, because I'd missed a lot of school. So I said, hey, what do you think about, like, don't you think that the tunnels kind of represent my mother's womb? And like, what if we film me kind of climbing up the tunnel, but really I'm trying to cut that emotional umbilical cord of my mother, and I could have tears coming down my face. And I went into this whole thing, and I was getting all excited because he was nodding his head. And then I waited. And then he looked at me and he said, why don't you just act? Just say the words on the page, you'll be fine.
It's my favorite thing.
No, but that's the truth. And I could have been like, Dick, but I didn't. I was like, oh, totally. I got it. Right? For sure. Like, I was thinking the same thing. I was, what am I thinking? You know?
I had a friend who did a movie with Clint, who appears in your book, was a young actor like you. And, you know, we grew up idolizing these guys.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
They're our heroes. That's why we got in the business. And then we find ourselves on a set with them if we're lucky enough. And my friend was co-starring with Clint. And Clint is a man of few words. And he hadn't said anything, really, to my friend who's starring in the movie. It's first day of shooting, sun's not even up. He's like, my friend's sweating, going, I don't even know what we're doing. And he gathers up his nerve, knocks on Clint's dressing room. Clint goes, yeah. He's like, I just was wondering, like, you know, it's our first day, you know, and everything. And like, if you wanted to maybe, I don't know, talk about what we're, you know, like how we're going to, I don't know, do it and stuff like that. You know, what we're going to do. And Clint goes, well, I think we're going to hit our marks and say a few words.
But like, for real, verbatim.
The old school guys, right?
It's true. Just do your stuff.
Tommy Lee Jones has some really great moments in your book as well. And then you, by the way, your performance as young Tommy Lee Jones, bro, is one of the great pleasures. It really is amazing. Now, how did he feel about that? Was he a great?
I don't know.
No way.
No. I did 3 movies with the guy.
I know.
And when I was, so No Country, we did that whole thing. And then we did, what was the other one? In the Valley of Elah with Paul Haggis. And then we were doing Men in Black 3. And I was freaking out because I had done a little Tommy Lee Jones impression, but you can just say a few words and kind of get away with an impression.
Yeah.
You know? Or whatever.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah, it's just
that
what
was
it
really
is.
good.
You know what I mean? And then
good.
you got to go down and like do like a full movie of dialogue, you know, and Will Smith's established that character. So I went down to Mexico and I took a computer down there, GarageBand, and I just watched Men in Black 1 over and over and over and over and over. And I just wasn't getting, and I was drinking, so then I would drink and go out and like, you know, it just was a bad deal. And then I'd see Tommy and I'd be like, hey, and we went to Korea to promote, and I said, hey, Tommy. And I was always trying to talk to Tommy because like there's similarities there, you know. I have horses, I grew up with horses. You know, hey, you know, how you doing? I'm fine. Cool. So what'd you think of the movie? And you're like, fuck, man, give me nothing. So I've just figured, the whole result is I've figured, the conclusion is that he hated me. And then a friend of his came up to me maybe a couple years later and they said, hey, I'm a friend of Tommy's. Tommy loves you. I'm like, what the fuck? I've done 3 movies with Tommy and he won't give me the time of day and he loves me, but that's Tommy. That's Tommy.
Talk to me about your sobriety journey a little bit. That's another thing we share. Both sober a long time now.
I went out yesterday. It's like not even funny, but it's super funny.
No, it is. Man, no, but I had a guy say that to me the other day. It was a lot of time, and it made
for real?
me. Yes.
Bummer.
Thought he was kidding, and he wasn't. And I was like,
it's usually I went out, but you know what? I'm just drinking beer right now. It's just a few beers.
Yeah. Oh, or my favorite.
Yeah.
You know, I got sober so young. I got.
You did
I
that
got
really
sober.
well, man. It's like you've said that before. You did that so well.
Yeah, I got sober.
Like,
I got sober at like 24. Like and it mostly was like the coke. I just wanna.
Yeah.
Like
it was never really alcohol for me.
No, and look, I'm moving to France anyway. I'm moving to France, and
moving to France.
I just want to have
What am I supposed to do there and not drink? I mean, it's in France.
It's France. I'm not gonna get fucked up, but like I want to have a glass of wine, and like within 6 months, they've bitten a cop in the face.
Dude.
It never fails.
You're killing it, dude.
Never fails.
That's funny.
Not once have I heard that story end well.
That's funny, dude. You sound like us now, man.
Right?
Yeah, it's true. That was really funny, Rob. Good on you, man. Yeah, I've heard that story. I've been that story. You know, I got sober at 19. I was looking at 14 years in prison at that time. I had a baby on the way. I had fought 6 cops, and you know, you end up going to prison for that kind of stuff. You know, and I was watching a lot of Bruce Lee movies at the time. It's the most. I went over to his house. I think I was supposed to help him do something, but then I got there and I was like, oh, God, I just remembered drugs. We should go get some drugs. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was like, no, dude, get out of here. I want to go. He was with his mom. Anyway, I ended up hitting him. And so he says, I'm out of here. And there's this chaos. And then the cops show up. And he said, as he was closing the door, he's watching me turn around and face the cops. And what he heard as the door was closing was, whoa. I mean, is that the truth?
Yeah.
Dude, 100%.
Bruce Lee was out on the street fighting 6 cops.
So I didn't, and again, I was into martial arts and all that, so I wasn't horrible. But he went to the hospital to go get stitched up. And he saw 2 of those cops at the hospital. He's like, oh, my bro's fucked up. Like, he's going to jail for sure. And they took my clothes because I got to the booking room, and I was ankle cuffed and I was handcuffed. I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's funny, man. And I was begging the cops. I was like, look, you're cutting off the circulation. My feet are starting to swell. Just like, what am I going to do? I'm already in the booking room, you know? And so I finally convinced him to take off the ankle cuffs, and I attacked him again. Cito rats, bro.
He's a bad, bad man.
It wasn't.
How did you get domesticated?
I don't know, man. Montecito was different back then. I don't know. It was just different, you know? Anyway. So, yeah, I woke up naked. They took my clothes as evidence, and I woke up naked having no idea what I had done. And then I saw 6 counts of assault with a deadly weapon without firearm, and I was like, ooh. So I ended up doing a few months, and then I was in a halfway house after that, and I would drive from the halfway house to the birthing class. You know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And Trevor's 36 years old now, and 8 years sober, and it's a cool motherfucker.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great.
The nervous applause.
Talk a little bit about what you and I were sharing notes about writing, and you were saying that you had a moment after you've finished the book. First of all, you had a moment writing the book when your editor said to you, "What was with?" Do you know the story I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
So the editor urged you. You got to a certain point in your life and you changed your writing style on the book. And right?
No, yeah, my lit agent.
Yes. Tell that story because I think it's super interesting.
My lit agent. So I was writing the book. It was in 3 chapters at that point. You know, the book has morphed a lot of different, and it's in a very non-linear kind of timeline now. But the first chapter, and then I was writing the second chapter, and then there's a third chapter that was a letter to my children. And then, so the first chapter was done, and writing the second chapter. But I was like, you know what, man? You know, the self-help section back in the day, because I've spent a lot of time in bookstores, spent my whole life in bookstores. The self-help section was like as big as the poetry section. You know, it was about that wide. It was about 6 feet tall, and that's it. Now it's 75% of the bookstore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have your thing. And why? Because they don't work, or so you got a lot to choose from, or I don't know, whatever. We're all going for the same thing, but it's become a thing, you know, like ice baths. And so
equally enjoyable?
Maybe for some, I don't know. But the thing is that I just had a feel like this is just too intense. It's too depressing. It's just too much. There's a lot here, and I gotta bring some inspiration to it. I gotta bring some happy. I gotta bring some, you know what I mean? All right, you know.
Yeah, green lights.
Yeah, green lights. You know,
green lights.
And I love that book, but he has that sense about him always that I don't know, or at least I didn't perceive in myself that much. And so I started writing with that in mind, having told nobody. And I wrote another 40,000 words like that, and it was just a small tweak. And then my Kimberly Witherspoon at Inkwell Management, she said. She read it, that draft, and she said, the first chapter, unbelievable. The writing's great. Writing's even better than it's been. It's very visceral, really hits you hard. It's great. You don't need to change much. We'll talk about a few things. What the fuck happened with chapter 2? And I literally fell in love with that woman at that moment, because I like straight shooting. I like honesty. I like humility. I like accountability. I've kind of become addicted to it. And even when it hurts, I kind of have the idea that the lesson is right around the corner. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, it doesn't sound like you. You sound like you're trying to be somebody else. I had said nothing, man. So she saw me. She saw me. And she saw that weakness in me that was like, you like me, you like me. You're so inspiring, Josh. She's like, go back and write the whole thing over. I was like, fuck, the whole thing?
40,000 words.
40,000 words. And it wasn't major tweaks, but it was a tonal tweak.
It's a total point of view shift.
Be yourself. It's okay. You're a writer, right?
And again, you are, and that's what blew my mind in the book. Because everybody has stories, you know, and some of us are actually storytellers, which is not everybody is, but some of us are.
Right.
But being able to write those stories in a way that is so moving. It's like your guy Cormac McCarthy, who also makes a great appearance.
A couple of appearances in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're clearly inspired by that as well. How long?
By him as an anti-celebrity.
Anti-celebrity.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean? Tell me what you mean by that.
There's something in the book that was the truth. You know, I was with Cormac the night he died. He died at 10 o'clock the next morning, and his son called me and said, you know, something's really going downhill. Would you come over? My dad's asking about you. And I said, yeah, of course I will. And I just finished work. We were in Santa Fe, and I went over there, and it was me, Cormac, his ex-wife, his son, and me. And Cormac was telling these crazy stories. It was like he was putting his finger back on these great memories that he loved. And he was talking about, like, you know, having wine with Andre the Giant in Paris. Like, what? You know, and had never heard any of these stories. And he would just tell it, and then he'd go to sleep, and then he'd wake up, and he'd tell another story and reach for a sip of Diet Coke. And so the thing with Cormac is there was one time where I bought a typewriter like his, and ironically, I bought a typewriter like his, and I kind of showed up with the typewriter. And kind of hit it, and we're talking, and we're having like just shitty steak and onions or whatever, burnt steak, and I go, oh, will you do me a favor? Just like, oh yeah, I had a thought. Would you do me a favor? would you sign this? And he looked at me like, no, we have another thing. Like, why do you need to validate yourself? And I was like, and I just spiraled. I was like, shame on me. And I just knew I had overstepped something that was fully organic. And he went back, luckily. It went back to this place where it was organic and all that. But he goes, and he kind of pawned it off like, he said, if I sign that, I'll have to sign other people's and all that. There was just something, he didn't want to talk about writing ever. I was just tell me one person who you loved. And eventually he said, Hemingway had some pretty good short stories, which I go, pretty fucking good, weren't they? But even Sam Shepard was a friend of his and like loaned him the Santa Fe Institute, his little cubicle in Santa Fe Institute so he had another place to write. And he had ALS, I think, at that time. And I said, what do you think of Sam's writing? He said, never read it. I said, you never read Sam Shepard's writing? He said, not a word. I said, did you avoid it? He said, no, I just never got to it.
He said, we had another thing.
Yeah, we had another thing. Yeah, we were sleeping together. No. Yeah. So it was interesting to me. And eventually, just to kind of conclude it, he just finally one day said, I don't know why. There's no reason for it. I sit down in front of my computer every day. I work, and it comes to me, and I write it down. It was almost like he was saying, I'm a conduit. I don't know where this came from. It's as much of a mystery to me as anything. And this stuff comes out. I'm like, yeah, but maybe our greatest American writer, maybe contemporary.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Art.
Thank you, man.
This was everything I thought it would be and more.
Yeah.
Huge fan of you as a dad and a dude and a friend and
Thanks.
and an actor, and so happy for you that this book is getting the kind of
Thank you.
credit that it deserves.
Yeah.